Well, good morning, everybody. It is Sean Nason here from the Nason Group. It has been a long time since we've done one of these Experience Live shows, but I am so excited about today and my guest today. So I just want to remind you, if you're out there listening to us live, go ahead, type questions, comments in, and we will get to them. Don't be afraid. We will get as many as we can. And be looking out for us and follow us. Myself, Sean Nason. You can follow me on LinkedIn. You can find my information below, or Sean at nasongroup.co. But let me dive right into. I am joined today by Jono Wilde, Executive Director of the Good Life Movement. Jono is working to spark a mental health civil rights movement, including a new federal bill called the Life, Liberty, and Pursuit of Happiness Act. Jono's commitment to this work is deeply personal. After witnessing his father's long battle with bipolar disease and the repeated failures of our medical, insurance, and social systems, Jono experienced the devastating loss of his father to suicide in February 2024 at 67. So I want to welcome Jono to this stage. Hey, Jono, how are you doing, buddy?
I am doing well, Sean. Thanks for having me.
Well, it is great to have you here and have you part of the show today. And I'm really excited about what you are working on. And for those that are listening and joining in today, I am honored to be part of the board of the Good Life Movement that Jono is a part of. So, Jono, we start every show, have done this now. I've done these shows for 3 or 4 years. We start every show with the very same question. And that is, why do you do what you do and what keeps you motivated as you do it?
Yeah. Starting with the why is important. And I appreciate that we're starting there. I think you said most of it in the intro. My experience watching what my father went through was not only tragic, but eye-opening. And while his death and his suicide was its own tragedy, what I came to learn was that the larger tragedy is that his story is actually the rule in this country, not the exception. And the reason I'm doing what I'm doing is because his is one of 131 suicides a day is what America averages. We average one suicide every 11 minutes. We have more suicides in this country than we do auto accidents. And when you think about all the rules and laws and legislation around making sure that driving is safe for all of us and all the public education campaigns around drunk driving and making sure you wear tickets or our seatbelts, all of that energy put around something like automobile deaths when suicide and mental illness is actually a major killer in this country and far out exceeds that. So even absent suicide, what I came to learn really in the wake of my father's death was that this country has neglected mental health for a really, really long time. And even outside of suicide, someone with a serious mental illness in America on average will die 25 years earlier than the general public. And I think the average lifespan in America is somewhere in like 76, 77, somewhere around there, depending if you're man or woman. So we're talking about 1/3 of a life cut short because of mental illness. And the other thing, the real kicker that I came to learn is that over the course of that shortened lifespan, someone with a serious mental illness in this country will spend 20% more on their medical costs over their lifetime than the general public. Now, I'm no mathematician, but that doesn't add up, right?
Yeah.
So having my eyes open to his experience and then learning the ugly truth that his experience was by no means unique is really what has motivated this work. And I still have family members who struggle with mental illnesses. I myself have had depression my entire adult life. So the work doesn't end with my father. That's really where it's all started. And I think the most important thing for me is that very soon after my father passed, my wife and I actually had our first child, a son. And I know that the genetic lottery will probably not be kind to him, and he probably has been born with a predisposition for some sort of mental illness, given the family history. So the motivation for me to keep doing what I'm doing is that the world that my father found to be bearable that can't be the world that my son grows up in. And it's as simple as that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. And we're going to actually dig into that a little bit more here. And you gave some statistics, but just recently, just came out that in 2025, we're getting to the holidays and time is ending here. Nearly 3 in 10 U.S. adults reported a mental health crisis in just the past year.
Mm-hmm.
And what's staggering to me around that comment, around that statistic for 2025, is they're not talking about just a mental health battle.
Right.
They're talking about a mental health crisis.
Correct. Yep.
So in the work you're doing and in what you know about the mental health space and behavioral health space, how do you define a crisis? Because I think that's a really good baseline for us to look at, knowing that 30% of adults in the U.S. this year has dealt with some type of mental health crisis.
Right. Yeah. So, and the numbers continue to get worse. The year over year average in America is that 1 in 5 Americans will publicly admit, at least, that they are living with a mental illness. That's only counting the number that, and while 1 in 5 report living with a mental illness, 5 in 5 of us have a loved one, by extension, that is dealing with a mental illness. So all of us are at most 2 degrees removed from a mental illness. And the interesting thing with the mental health crisis in just the past year is that I think that's actually a sign of progress in a weird way. I think more people are willing to talk about this stuff, and we're actually being more open about our experiences. And I suppose the underreported numbers are starting to come to the surface a little bit more, but it's still a crisis, and we should still treat it as such. I think what's also important for folks to really understand is that the mental health conversation, it should expand beyond crises and the bad stuff that we tend to associate with mental health. I think a lot of people, when they hear mental health, they hear mental illness, and they immediately think of things like suicide, substance abuse, and really crippling depression and things like that. But mental health is like physical health. We have good days, we have bad days, and the same way that we might casually mention having a headache or not, we should get to a point where we're able to discuss mental health in that same sort of benign matter-of-factness, because it is a disease and it is like anything else, and mental health is just part of the human condition. So even when we're feeling good, that's mental health. And I think we're moving in the right direction to have more of these conversations, but that statistic that you just quoted, yeah, I think that's very telling of where we are as a country. And I would say that that's probably still underreported, actually, as far as
yeah. And Jono, you and I have just met recently, actually, because you and I are part of a group called the REAL Foundation for Mental Health, which is really focused on men's mental health. And we met at a conference when we were in New York City about 8 weeks ago. And the goal right now is to move $10 billion of capital into investing into the mental health space. But as you know, I know with my work in the healthcare space, is that's going to be a really big mountain to move. And we actually heard it really well said that it's risk capital, right? So there's not a lot of short-term gain around this. It's more long-term play. But yet in the private equity world, they're looking for results right away.
Yeah.
And so I know that's really starting to even open up the conversation more, talk more about it. And we can talk about that. And I know we've talked some about it, but I want to go back to this statement of, what moment or experience, and we've talked about your dad's suicide in 2024, made you realize that mental health needed a movement at that scale.
Yeah.
Scale we're talking about from the Good Life movement, not just more programs or services.
Yeah. And I get this question a lot, right? Like, why does it need to be a mental health civil rights movement is what a lot of people are asking. And the sobering reality that I learned in the process, both preceding and following my father's death, one, all the stats were mind-boggling to the extent that mental health is such a major killer in this country. I mean, suicide is the 9th leading cause of death in this country. It's actually number 4 if you count deaths of despair, which I do because those feel like long suicide plays for people. So over the last 5 years, the only thing that has killed more Americans per year has been cancer, heart disease, and COVID. That's it. Everything, the 4th leading cause of death in this country has been suicide and mental illness related substance abuse. So looking at that landscape, I was first just shocked to learn that this problem was so prevalent, because you would think something that of this magnitude would be talked about more. Again, it touches everyone's lives, whether it's a serious mental illness or even just something more minor that we're able to handle on our own. It's part of the human condition. So it's a wonder why we don't talk about this stuff more. The moment I realized that we needed to actually create a social movement around this was the result of reading Thomas Insel's book, Healing. And I highly recommend this book to anyone out there who wants to learn more about the state of mental health care in this country. I don't know if you guys can see it there. Thomas Insel was the former director of the National Institute of Mental Health under both President Bush and Obama. He was there for like 15 years. And he was tasked with that mountain of a challenge that you mentioned in terms of how do we address this. And what I came to realize reading his book was that we actually know how to solve this, which came as more of a shock to me. You know, going into it, I was learning all these stats and I thought, all right, maybe the state of things is forgivable if we're clueless as to what to do. But the sad reality is that we actually know how to solve this. There are treatments, there's medication, there's therapy. We know the power of what we call psychosocial support, which is just doctor talk for community, having friends and family you can count on. And the programs and the institutions that Thomas Insel outlines in this book, these are all very doable. And so it's not a question of how do we do it. We know how to do it. And again, I encourage folks to read the book because he'll go into the weeds that we can't go into today as far as how you do it. But if it's not a question of how, and we know how to solve it, then like everything else in this society, it comes down to what do we choose to prioritize as a people, right? And the question I posed to everyone is, imagine if a foreign government was killing Americans at the rate that mental illness is killing Americans. We've seen how America responds to that kind of threat. And there's never a debate as to what is it going to cost? Can we afford to do it? Is it worth doing? Of course it is, because Americans are being killed. And we have seen how this country can respond to foreign threats, but the real threats are domestic. They're here at home. And if we could turn that energy inward and address, again, what is the 4th leading cause of death in this country, it's not a matter of how, but a question of, do we set this as a priority as a people? Do we finally say enough is enough and this needs to be a political priority for people? So that's the motivation behind having it be a social movement in concert with all of the programs and the institutions that need to be put up as well.
So you were talking about a political movement, right?
Yeah.
A little bit here. So, you know, recent research is really showing that voters across parties see mental health now as a major crisis and want leaders to treat it as that priority. But yet, I've worked in healthcare for a lot of years. You've been around it. We are also very fully aware that how our reimbursement model works, right?
Yeah. Or doesn't for
or doesn't.
Yeah.
Yes. So, for me, how do you think that consensus can be turned into real action, not just talk? Because we
Yeah.
have a lot of talk around it right now.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of talk around it, and like anything else in politics, talk is cheap. That's why everyone peddles in it, because it's easy. And action is the real question, and how do we do something about it? So first, I want to just touch on the fact that it's bipartisan, which you alluded to. The numbers are overwhelming. 88% of all registered voters in America, which is roughly 164 million Americans, say that mental health should be a priority. Now, we say this when we're being surveyed and it's anonymous and we feel comfortable doing that, but we don't have that dialogue one to one, right? There's still stigma and there's still shame around mental illness. So these are private conversations, but 88% of registered voters feel that this needs to be a political priority. And it is across the political spectrum. We know 94% of Democrats, 87% of Republicans, and 87% of independents all agree that there is a growing mental health crisis in this country that needs to be addressed. And I will say that again for the people that have been unfortunate students like I have of Democrats and Republicans don't agree on anything. Yet 94% of Democrats and 87% of Republicans say that we need to address this crisis because it doesn't discriminate. It's in red states, it's in blue states, it's in urban settings, in rural settings. Again, mental health is part of the human condition. So it's everywhere. So the political push and incentive is there. But again, it's only existing behind the curtain, so to speak, when people can anonymously answer surveys. They don't feel like they have to put their name on it. They're not out there publicly talking about it because it's still the best kept secret in the world that we all have a mental health experience. So how do we turn that into action is a question, right? The bill that we're drafting is one way. At the Good Life movement, what we have decided to do is we figured let's be the organization that we've been waiting for. Let's just go ahead and write an omnibus bill that is going to include everything we feel that we need to do in this country to address the mental health crisis, not just in terms of increasing the number of therapists and opening up drug manufacturing. That's part of it, but also standardizing mental health as part of our culture is part of what the bill does. We want to implement a standard K through 12 curriculum that touches on mental education. We all remember taking a PE class. Physical education was part of our upbringing because it was considered important enough that we should all learn at least the baseline, the basics of our physical health. So we all had PE. We need ME. We need mental education. Ideally, it's all in one. They shouldn't be separated. But for now, we would at least like to prioritize mental health in all the ways that physical health has been prioritized. So we've written this bill, and I encourage people to go to our website, thegoodlifemovement.org. The outline is there. You can actually check it out. You can see all 8 titles that are in there. We are trying to cover everything from nationalizing the 988 crisis line to opening up funding, to establishing oversight committees so that if a law is passed, they will actually be enforced. Because there was a insurance parity law passed in 2008 by Patrick Kennedy, and yet people like my father, as recent as last year, were still unable to get certain mental health therapies covered because the insurance companies found a workaround and there's no oversight. So the bill addresses that too, because the idea is it's not enough to just pass the bill, because again, talk is cheap. We don't want it to just be a stunt. We want to establish the departments. We want to establish the institutions. We want to establish the oversight committees. And then we want to establish a new norm where we're all able to just talk about this stuff because it is just a fact of life. So you can check out the bill at our website. And we think that that is a step in the right direction to put some real action. What, again, is a unanimous call by the American people to do something about this.
Yeah, so Jono, just some comments that I'm paying attention to says, truly inspired, building a big tent for everyone. Mental health solutions must be inclusive. We need more leaders who are willing to challenge the status quo. finally a national conversation on mental health rooted in dignity and rights, not stigma.
Mm-hmm.
And grateful to see someone taking a stand for real systemic change. So,
if I could offer something, Sean, sorry,
yeah,
real quick,
yeah,
that what one person spoke to about the challenging the status quo, I have a quote that sits on my wall right next to my computer, and it's from Buckminster Fuller, which is not only a great name, but he was also an architect, a philosopher, a designer. He was a multi-hyphenate. This guy did everything back in the 70s. And Buckminster Fuller, I encourage him up too. He's quite the character. He has this great quote where he says, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, you need to build that makes the existing model obsolete." Right. And so that's what we want to do with a social movement, is that we have to change the model.
Well, so here's an interesting play on that.
Yeah.
That I knew someone would ask this question. And this comes from Michael Kirkendall. In the age of AI, how does that factor into the bill?
So I had the pleasure of talking with Michael a few weeks ago. He actually owes me a follow-up email, Michael. We'll talk about that later.
Good way to call him out right here.
Yep. Good to see you here, though. AI is definitely part of the bill. Again, you can see the actual text on this if you go to our website, goodlifemovement.org. We have the 8 titles, but then there actually is a link there at the bottom that will take you to the Google Doc that actually then fleshes it out. It's only a 3-page outline, so I'm not assigning too much homework for everybody. But there you'll find details on how we're wanting to approach AI. And this is obviously a huge conversation. And what I will say to that is the way we're looking at it is that therapy needs to be more accessible. Part of the challenge that my father faced and that a lot of people face is that even if they are willing to push past the stigma and the shame and they want to seek help, they don't know where to find it. Or if they do know where to find it, their insurance won't cover it and it's too expensive. So we need to make therapy more accessible, and AI therapy can do that. There's a lot of regulation that needs to be structured around it. There is a lot of concerted thinking and effort that needs to be put into it. Do not use general AI for therapy. It will not do it. Sean, you and I were at a conference, like you mentioned, a couple of weeks ago, and the guy, I can't remember what panel it was, but the guy said, look, if your AI therapist, if you prompt them and ask for a cookie recipe and it spits back a cookie recipe, that's not AI therapy. That's a general AI platform, right? You want a AI therapy app or model, whatever it is, that has been built by clinicians and can only speak to and has only been trained on how to treat either a mental illness, a crisis, or just an everyday conversation. So prompt it, ask it for a cookie recipe. And if it has no idea what the hell you're talking about, you're in the right place. That's the shorthand. But to answer your question directly, Michael, yes, that is a big piece of this because it's obviously the emerging, it's probably at the forefront of where some of the accessible therapies are going. So we need to be cognizant of it. And I think if done right, it could really fill the gap for folks who can't otherwise access traditional therapies.
Yeah, I love it. That we could do a whole show just on AI.
Yeah.
And in the work that I do, I spend a lot of time in that space. So, I want to start to close up. And if you're out there and you're listening, you want to have questions, you have comments for us, please still send those to us. But for everyone, out there that is just listening and who is thinking, I am just one person. What can I do? What would you say directly to them?
So Malcolm X used to talk about our individual spheres of influence, right? He used to talk about how we can actually have both positive and negative impact on the people that orbit around us, whether it's family, friends, coworkers, community. And if we're conscious about the energy we put out into our spheres of influence, we can actually have a greater impact, because obviously it would be a domino effect, right? So with that in mind, I would first say that just one person is what a society is built on. It's just one person, one person, one person. And before you know it, you have a movement and you have a community. So for one thing, give yourself more credit. You're more than one person. You're part of a larger movement here. What you can do individually is start talking more openly about mental health. And I know that this is the scary thing that no one wants to do, because stigma has been beaten into us all day, every day by our society. But again, remember the numbers. 88% of registered voters say that this is a crisis that needs to be addressed. 1 in 5 Americans will admit to living with a mental illness. 5 in 5 Americans have said they have a loved one who's been affected. So everyone's out there. They're just afraid to start the conversation. And again, I would also encourage you to expand the mental health conversation to be not just the negative things that we all know about. We need to understand mental health is the full continuum of that state. The same way our physical health, I can be feeling really good one day. I can be feeling shitty with a cold or a headache the next day, and it ebbs and flows. Mental health is the same way. So I would encourage folks to be more open about their mental health. When you're feeling really good, express that. When you're feeling depressed, express that. When you're feeling excited or anxious, express that. And you'll be pleasantly surprised to see it reciprocated back to you. The other thing you could do in the spirit of self-promotion, I would ask, go to the goodlifemovement.org website, sign up for our newsletter, donate if you can, even if it's just $10. Having an army of donations, especially small individual donors, is actually what shows politicians that there's real action behind this, because they see that as a meaningful step that someone has taken. Signing up for a newsletter is great, but that's more of a passive action. So if I can take a list of, look at all these donors that have actually put their money where their mouth is, and again, even if it's $10, it's fine. But we want to have an army of folks so that we can go to legislators with this bill to say, hey, there's real support behind this. And then the other thing I would say is share the bill with people that you think it might be impactful for. Give someone hope. Again, you can find the bill, at the website. Feel free to share it. I believe the Google Doc is shareable for everyone. If not, shoot me an email, Jono, Jono, at thegoodlifemovement.org, and I'm happy to share it with you, because the idea is more people that are talking about it, more people that know about it, we normalize it. We normalize it, we normalize it, we normalize it till it gets to a point of inevitability where we're saying to each other, I mean, I'm already saying that it's a wonder this hasn't been done yet, and it should have been done yesterday, but we want to get this, essentially every kitchen table needs to be talking about this, and it needs to get to a point that it's so overwhelmingly known that we can do it, that our government will have no choice but to do it.
I love those points, and I'm gonna summarize them here just so we have them one more time for our listeners here. Is, first, talk to one person this week. Find one person. Talk about mental health, and talk about it more than you talk about their physical health.
Mm-hmm.
I now have many people that I have these conversations with on a daily, weekly basis now. 2, share this conversation with someone who needs to hear that they are not alone.
Mm-hmm.
We will have this available. Send them this. As Jono said, reach out to him. You can reach out to me. Either way. And then again, 3rd is connect with the Good Life Movement online. Follow the progress. Follow the newsletter so you know what's happening around the Life, Liberty, and Pursuit of Happiness Act, and explore how you or your organization can support the mental health civil rights movement. As Jono said, even if it's $10, That's $10 going to something really powerful.
Mm-hmm. You can also get this hat on our website. We have
you
some.
can also get that hat that he's wearing. So I love it. Jono, thank you again for today, and thank you for sharing not only about the Good Life movement, but about your personal story with your father. And many of us are standing behind you, championing the great work that you're doing. So thank you again, my friend. And if you'll hang out, we're going to close up the show, and I'll say bye to you.
All right. Thank you, Sean. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, you guys, for listening to this and learning more about the Life, Liberty, and Pursuit of Happiness Act from the Good Life movement and Jono Wilde. As he said, you can find the bill at thegoodlifemovement.org / legislation. And you can talk to him as well at thegoodlifemovement.org. And so thank you for those listening in. And thank you for all of you who are doing powerful work in this space. We send blessings to you and have a great and amazing holiday season.